All right, let's bring in Stephanie Grisham, White House Press Secretary, Communications Director for the President. She joins us live from our D.C. bureau. Stephanie, good morning to you.
Good morning.
So I would imagine the President is getting updates on the situation all the time.
Absolutely. He's getting daily briefings. This is a top priority for him, which is what made him take the unprecedented steps he did a few weeks ago to restrict travel. Our task force is meeting twice every day and again briefing the President. So we're keeping track of everything. The safety of Americans is a #1 priority for the President and the administration.
All right. There's a story out there this morning we saw that apparently somebody who works at the National Security Council, a staffer by the name of Victoria Coates, may be reassigned to a position in the Department of Energy because there have been these rumors out that she may have been the person who wrote the op-ed as anonymous or was involved in that book. Apparently the publishing company, Javelin, says she's not the one. Can you what can you tell us about her being moved out of the NSC?
You know, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if that's something that's going to happen, if that's something that she wants to happen. You know, whoever wrote the anonymous book is a coward, and whoever wrote the anonymous book and the op-ed, they do need to be found. And the fact that they're working in government against the President and essentially against the American people is not good. I don't know what's going to happen in terms of that particular employee. We don't usually talk about personnel, and that would be an NSC issue.
Gotcha. All right.
All right, what was your reaction with that letter that 2,000 people signed it because they want Bill Barr, within the DOJ or former DOJ employees that want Bill Barr to step down?
Sadly, it didn't surprise me, to be honest with you. Look, all across government, the President has been saying, and I think it's been proven time and again, there are obstructionists all across this government who are working against the President. So it didn't surprise me. A lot of those were careers. There are many people who, you know, they hailed AG Barr when we first appointed him, and he's been doing a great job. The President has made clear his position on many different cases, but he leaves AG Barr to do his work. He's made it clear that the two things are separate, but the President will always tell the American people what his opinion is.
He's not going to step down?
No. Oh, AG Barr?
Yes, ma'am.
That is not something I'm aware of. Absolutely not.
Well, the President, you're right, has no hesitation in putting his views out there, including this morning. And he's tweeting about, we believe, referring to Roger Stone in that entire case. But the tweet speaks for itself, and we want to get you to react to it. He just tweeted this. He said, these were Mueller prosecutors, and the whole Mueller investigation was illegally set up based on a phony and now fully discredited fake dossier, lying and forging documents to the FISA court, and many other things. Everything having to do with this fraudulent investigation is badly tainted and, in my opinion, should be thrown out. But maybe there's some missing in the middle of that, Steve. The third tweet talks about lawsuits.
He said, if I wasn't president, I'd be suing everyone all over the place, but maybe I still will witch hunt. Okay, Stephanie, what's going on
Well,
there?
The President's obviously frustrated. We all are. Again, for 3 years, he has been under attack in one way or the other, and the Mueller report is another example of that. And then going back to what you were talking about with the Roger Stone case, I mean, the foreperson of a jury was somebody who was very vocal about not liking President Trump or his supporters. So I would just say to people who are watching, think about, you know, if you were on trial for something and the foreperson of the jury who is actually there to decide your fate is against who you worked for, against who you know, supported. That's scary stuff. So this is just another example of the constant barrage of corruption that has gone against this president. And of course, despite that, he continues to do great things. But he's frustrated, obviously, and who knows what he'll end up doing.
And again, without the tweets, we probably don't learn a lot of this stuff in the aftermath anyway, because the media is never going to talk about it. So
Correct.
it's crazy.
All right, Stephanie, good to see you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.